So I want for us to begin today in an unlikely place. Specifically, I want for us to begin in Rwanda. Now, for those of you of a certain age, you will no doubt recall the events of the Rwandan genocide, which broke out in April of 1994. After years of escalating tensions between two ethnic groups, the Tutsis and the Hutus, the plane of Rwanda's then president was shot down. Members of the Tutsi ethnic group were blamed. And shortly thereafter, a call to arms went out on the radio from the Hutu-led government. And then within the course of just hours, Tutsis were being indiscriminately killed by their Hutu neighbors. 3 months later, when the violence had finally subsided, almost 1 million people had been murdered. The majority of the Tutsi population had been wiped out, and many of their killers were still roaming around free. And now the nation had the task of rebuilding itself, even as the possibility of another outbreak of violence was ever looming above them. So enter into this moment psychologist Ervin Staub. Staub was a Hungarian Jew who managed to survive the Holocaust because his nanny, who happened to be a Christian, she risked her life to hide Staub in her household for the duration of the war. But coming out of that experience, Staub grew up consumed by the two interconnected questions. One was, why do people do terrible things to one another? And the second was, is there anything that we can do to stop it from happening? And that line of questioning led Staub into what became a very prestigious career in the field of psychology. He got his PhD at Stanford. He then later got a tenured professorship down the road at Harvard. And he was invited to speak at conferences all across the globe to talk about his research into the causes of genocide and how to prevent it. But in the aftermath of that horrific violence in Rwanda, Staub felt like researching and giving little speeches was no longer enough. He felt it was time to put his research that he had spent decades developing, it was time to put it into action. So he acted boldly. He got on a plane and just went to Rwanda. So from his research, Staub knew this. He knew that one of the best barriers to the spread of hate between different groups was close interpersonal relationships between the two, especially in the form of marriages. And so what he wanted to do was set up some sort of program in Rwanda to encourage intermarriage between the Hutus and the Tutsis. And at first, because he was new to the country, he had no idea where to begin. But after living there for some time, he came to realize that unlike in the US, where everybody has at least one television in their house, in Rwanda, radio was king. And so every single day, large groups of people, families and friends, would gather together to listen to news, to listen to music, and especially to listen to radio soap operas, which were the staple of Rwandan radio. And so Staub began to wonder, it was after all radio messaging from the government that first incited the violence of the Rwandan genocide. So he began to wonder, was the reverse true? Could the radio be used to actually bring these people together? And so following that wondering, Staub set to work. He hired a team of Rwandan writers, and he developed a radio soap opera. And out of respect for the Rwandan people, I'm not even going to venture a chance at its pronunciation. But this radio soap opera was about two fictional villages and two star-crossed lovers from rival ethnic groups. Now, the show was not so on the nose as to make them specifically from the Hutus and the Tutsis, but it was written in such a way as each of those ethnic groups could see themselves in the storylines that they were listening to every week. And it needs to be said that the show was an instant, immediate hit. After several years of will they or won't they get together drama, when the two main characters were finally going to get married, listeners of the show basically demanded that the producers stage a live-action wedding at the National Stadium. And so they did, and the stadium was filled to capacity. That is how popular this show was. But here's the rub. When a researcher came in a year after the show debuted in order to study the effect that it was having, what she unfortunately found was that the people's beliefs were not shifting at all. Not one little bit. While they enjoyed the show immensely, while they followed its plot lines with great interest, they still did not believe in intermarriage, and they still did not believe that it could help prevent future violence in their country. So much for Staub's hopes that a radio program could change the hearts and minds of the Rwandan people. However, interestingly, I think counterintuitively, and importantly for us this morning, there was something that the program did end up having an effect on. Namely, the rates of intermarriage between Hutus and Tutsis. After just a year of the soap opera being on the air, the number of marriages between Hutus and Tutsis had measurably, demonstrably increased. So even though their beliefs about intermarriage had not changed one bit, their behavior had. That's pretty wild, right? It's wild. So what does this have to do with anything? Well, what this whole story about Staub and this radio soap opera shows us in fairly dramatic fashion, if I do say so myself, is that your behavior precedes your belief. Or to put it another way, action leads and emotion follows. Or to put it yet another way, what we do shapes where our hearts go. And according to Jesus in this morning's story from the Gospel of Matthew, nowhere in our life is that more true than when it comes to what we do with our money. Where your treasure is, says Jesus, so too is your heart. And this is true to the extent that our monthly budgets, or, given the exorbitant cost of living in the greater Boston area, at least our habits around our discretionary spending, they are for us a pretty clear roadmap of our hearts. Do you want to know what you really value in this life? Do you want to know where your heart really rests? Do you want to know where your real self-worth lies? Then you just need to pay attention to where the money in your life, where it goes most easily, where it goes most joyfully, where it just kind of flies out of your pockets. Is it books? Maybe you care about knowledge, about being seen as smart, as someone who understands the way things work. Is it a gym membership or fitness classes? Maybe you care about strength, about being seen as capable, as someone who has it all together. Is it DoorDash or Grubhub? Maybe you care about comfort and convenience, being seen as someone who has too much on their plate to worry about what's for dinner. Is it makeup from Sephora? Clearly my spending. Maybe you care about confidence, being seen as beautiful, as someone who outshines those around you. And an actual confession for me, what it really is, it's Home Depot. That place gets me every time. And of course it has something to do, of course I want a nice home for my family, and we're not quite over the line of nice yet. But also, and I think a little more honestly, I I have a deeply ingrained belief if I just buy the right tool or enough tools, I'll be fully self-sufficient and I won't have to depend on other people. And I'm also kind of cheap. So all those realities converge, and I spend a lot of money at Home Depot. But whatever that is for you, these little receipts, these budget line items, they're not necessarily sinful, they're not necessarily evil, but they do tell a story. They tell a story about who we are and what really matters to us. Because where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. And the good news for us this morning is that this little teaching of Jesus is not just a diagnostic tool. This isn't Jesus saying, sorry, your heart's already wherever your money went, so good luck with that. No, that's not what Jesus is saying at all. What he's saying is that we have a choice. He's saying that you are not stuck. He's saying you get to decide what kind of person you want to become by deciding where your money goes. You can point your heart in a different, better direction by first pointing your wallet there first. That's the invitation in Jesus' words when he says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourself treasures in heaven. What he's saying is you do get to choose. Don't spend your life investing in stuff that wears out and breaks down or gets stolen out of your garage, because you can choose instead to put your treasure somewhere that matters. Somewhere that will shape you into the person that you actually want to be. If you want to care more about the poor, Jesus would say you should be giving to food banks and to mutual aid funds and to organizations that meet urgent needs. Do you want to care more about climate justice? You should be supporting the folks who are doing that work. Do you want to love your neighbor? You should be investing in spaces and communities that make that love real. And here, as the pastor of the church, it is literally my job to tell you that if this is one of those spaces for you, if this church helps you to see what is sacred in the world, in your neighbor, and in yourself, of course you should consider putting some of your treasure here, not out of guilt, but because where you spend your money is one of the most formative ways you become the person that you are called to be, and help build the world that you actually want to live in. And honestly, that is why I personally need to rethink my regular pilgrimages to Home Depot. Because as deeply, deeply, deeply satisfying as it is to walk through those neatly organized orange aisles full of fittings and tools and materials of every size and shape and purpose under the sun, as deeply gratifying as it is to always be able to find the perfect tool for the job, the truth is that the Home Depot's co-founder is a MAGA mega donor. And that sure as heck is not the kind of person I want to be, and that sure as heck is not the kingdom I want to be bankrolling. So maybe it is time for me to start spending my own money like it actually means something, because it does. It really does. Where your treasure goes, your heart follows. Friends, that is not just theology, that is psychology. Jesus said it 2,000 years ago. Harvard professor Irvin Staub said it after studying the aftermath of genocide. And somewhere in Rwanda, a crackly old radio soap opera proved that it's true. So friends, may you and I both choose well, that our treasure might lead us toward a better heart and toward a more beautiful world. In Jesus' name, amen.